I also believe that the pathway out of poverty on a more permanent basis is opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
I think we got to get back to what does it mean to more equitably distribute opportunity in this country. And regardless of how you want to look at it, one of the most powerful tools is education. That's why parents, millennium, have been telling you, go out, get educated, and that gives you the best chance for a better life. And we should be doing nothing to impede that.
Hi, I'm Jeff Holden. Welcome to the Nonprofit Podcast Network. Our purpose and passion is to highlight a nonprofit organization in each weekly episode, giving that organization an opportunity to tell their story in their words to better inform and educate the respective communities they serve, as well as provide one more tool for them to share their message to constituents and donors. Our goal is to help build stronger communities through shared voices and to both encourage and support the growth of local nonprofit organizations through podcasting. I'm thrilled to welcome Smudge Shine Awards as our episode sponsors, supporting our nonprofit community with grants for more efficient energy usage, with continuing thanks to our founding partners, Cap Trust, fiduciary advice for endowments and foundations, and Western Health Advantage, a full-service healthcare plan for individuals, employer groups, and families. If I take you back a few years, provided you've been in town long enough and happen to literally be old enough to remember the mid to late 80s, there was a very progressive health initiative taking place by an organization known as Foundation Health. We saw ease of access to healthcare in our neighborhoods with their facilities. They were progressive, big thinkers, and when they sold, they took some of those proceeds to establish an organization we now recognize as Sierra Health Foundation. They were one of the very first health conversion foundations and certainly now one of the oldest. The big ideas never ceased, the progressive actions didn't stop, and today, 40 years later, Sierra Health Foundation is one of the most recognized names in health equity initiatives in the country. Partnerships and community have paved the way for investment in so many organizations, and the knowledge gained, not only through recession and pandemic, but with only 2 leaders of this incredible operation since its inception, is what sets it apart in so many ways. It's my privilege to speak with Chet Hewitt, CEO and President of Sierra Health Foundation and founder of the Center at Sierra Health Foundation, to have him explain the relationship, the partnerships these organizations represent, not only in Northern California, but the state as well. Chet Hewitt, welcome to the Nonprofit Podcast Network.
Thank you so much, Jeff. Happy to be here with you.
You know, your organization is no newcomer to the cycles of funding and healthcare evolution. As a matter of fact, this is the 40th anniversary, I think.
Yeah, we're celebrating our 40th year.
That is amazing. What was the genesis of Sierra Health? What originated it? How did it come about?
The creation of Sierra Health is really a big idea and a powerful idea. And I don't just say that because of its relationship to the foundation that I'm privileged to run, but because of the historic effect that it actually had. So mid-'80s, the foundation health plan was actually purchased by a for-profit health plan. It had been a nonprofit health plan. And you cannot take the nonprofit assets into a for-profit company. Those assets revert back to the state. They're not owned by an individual. In this case, a group of forward-thinking folks decided that perhaps what they could do, rather than make a payment to the state that could be spent on some good purpose, we'll just assume that you could create an evergreen entity that would carry forth the aspirations of the Foundation Health Plan in perpetuity. And that gave rise to the creation of the Sierra Health Foundation. And what's really unique about these health conversion foundations, as they're known, they are not about an individual's wealth. It's not named for a person who did extraordinarily well. Mm-hmm. We're used to foundations that have that kind of relationship. This was the wealth of the people from this part of California, which 40 years later is still making a return on the investment that gave rise to the foundation.
And significantly so, which is what I'm excited to speak with you about. And if I'm not mistaken from our previous conversation just a few minutes ago, you are only the second Chief Executive Officer, President of the organization, correct?
That's right. In 40 years, there have been two of us. Len McCandless, who did a great job standing up this institution. We always say we stand on the shoulders of people who come before us. That is true. Got us off to a phenomenal start with some historical investments, things that we were really part of, and we have built from that legacy until today.
That's amazing to think that 40 years, two people. What a tenured history, but what an incredible amount of intellectual equity you've got for the organization and the community at large. Tell us a little bit about the way that the organization is structured, because you really do have two entities under one roof. We'll start with Sierra Health, but you do have two. Explain that a little bit for us.
Yeah, we have the Sierra Health Foundation, which is that 40-year entity that is a derivative of the Foundation Health Plan. As I said earlier, has led to the creation of health conversion foundations across this country. Lou Reed, who did a lot of the legal work for us, went on to help create the California Endowment and several other health conversion foundations. And while Sierra Health is the first, we believe, west of the Mississippi, there are now over 350 of them across the country.
Oh, my gosh.
So when I say it was a big idea about how to localize philanthropy, because we started with the 26-county region that we were focused on here in California, that big idea is still growing across the country. Structurally, we have evolved. We're not the exact same institution we were 40 years ago because things have changed.
Sure.
We've learned a lot through our grant making and our financial management, which led after the Great Recession, where there was real turbulence in the philanthropic space. Many institutions had lost a lot of wealth. And we really began to think differently about how do we continue to have the impact that we were desirous of having under different conditions. And that led to the idea of creating the center at Sierra Health and thinking about the enterprise, not just the foundation. Like, what are the components, the institutional structures you need to really meet our mission, which is a healthful life for all, right? And we believe that the foundation and its grant-making work and the center with its capacity-building development work, largely using resources from public and other philanthropic institutions, those kind of public-private partnerships, that led to the creation of what we describe as a philanthropic intermediary that allows us to, in very thoughtful and well-managed ways that really meets levels of accountability you have when you're spending public or private money, to get those dollars into the hands of groups and communities who we know are doing tremendous work. Groups who might have otherwise not have been as competitive to receive those resources, perhaps because of their size or their lack of connections to public institutions, or even sometimes they're being unaware that there were opportunities for them to participate in any number of programs that we have been fortunate to run.
People are going to play back that answer 2 and 3 and 4 times to really grasp the gravity of what you just said, because it's pretty significant in terms of the way the structure of the organization is built. Tell us now about Sierra Health, the programs that Sierra Health provides, and what that represents in the community. That's 26 counties, correct?
That's right. Well, Sierra Health on that side, we'll spend about $5.5 million this year funding a range of programs. We will help food banks who are delivering food to populations who are food insecure. We will support and have supported programs that are testing new innovations in the social space, like a guaranteed income program, to see what impacts that actually has. We are supporting work to stem gun violence in communities as well. We're supporting people's ability to get access to specialty care and health insurance so that they can actually manage their physical health better, as well as supporting the expansion of behavioral health care. We know that in this country there's a crisis for folks around behavioral health access and, mental health awareness. And so, those are the kind of things that we're engaged in locally. And locally, I mean across our primary funding region, which is the 26 counties of Northern California, and increasingly the 8 counties into the San Joaquin Valley as well.
So maybe into Fresno area.
As far as Fresno.
Okay.
South as Fresno.
Okay. And by funding, that's a grant application into the organization. Are there windows of time when opportunities present themselves? Are those opportunities segmented for various categories? Tell us a
We,
little
we
bit
do a little
about.
bit of both. We have a responsive grants program
Mhm.
that has a theme to it. It provides, kind of core support grants to nonprofits to do the good work that they describe that they need help being able to do.
Mhm.
The one thing about our form of philanthropy, as with other foundations that we're partners with, we're not always being overly prescriptive, right? People in communities have a good sense of what their communities are grappling with,
Yeah.
what some of the priorities in their communities. And we try to really be responsive to what they see as the most pressing needs in those communities. And we do have some directed initiatives as well. Over the years, we have done things focused on youth development, which has been a pretty consistent theme in our investment portfolio. Several years ago, people remember the REACH program we did, which is in several counties in our particular region, focused on the healthy development of young people. Our positive youth justice work, which we work kids who were coming into contact with justice systems and trying to think differently about the types of interventions that we had with young people, so that it was more pro-social and developmental
Mhm.
than just punitive. Kind of restorative justice models we think hold great sway around improving public safety
Mhm.
in communities, particularly those that have disproportionate levels of harm taking place in those communities. We're very proud of our Black Child Legacy campaign, which is a very interesting program that was started and championed by Phil Cerna, which is our county supervisor, in response to information that came from the Child Death Review Team that for 20 years, African American children died at 2 to 3 times the rate of other children in our county. And I want to spend just a minute talking about that program
I mean,
because it's
just to
very,
even think of this in the last 40 years, the last 20, whatever, any time in this time frame is amazing to me. It's incredible to believe that that's even the case.
yes. Well, infant and maternal mortality for the African American population has been and continues to be an issue. And I want to take just a minute quickly to talk about this because I think it's a really interesting example of what I'm talking about and how sometimes when people are concerned about programs that focus on a specific population, how it can be helpful in a larger context
Mm-hmm.
as well. I like to say that good child and family policy, even when it's a program focused on a single population, tends to be good for everybody. And the Black Child Legacy Campaign is an example of that. So one of the areas, 4 major causes of death that led to this disparity. And through research and science, we found out that 82% of those deaths took place in 7 communities. So we were able to focus our efforts with
Mm-hmm.
our public sector partners and champions on those communities. And I have to shout out First Five and, the
Great
county's,
organization.
health and human service organizations too, because they have been extraordinary players in this particular work, as well as Department of Children and Adult Services
Mm-hmm.
as well. And we have had an impact because the goal was to reduce those death rates by 20%. That has actually been achieved, and
Congratulations.
we're moving beyond those particular markers in the next round of work. But one of the areas was leading areas of preventable deaths was sleep-related accidents. Young children not having safe places to sleep.
Mm.
Now, I know that many people thought, you're talking about African-American community, it's probably going to be some form of violence, but no. Neonatal conditions, which is a lack of access to health care, and then sleep-related deaths were the top 2 causes of Black child disparities in death rates. So while we're still struggling with the neonatal one, and we're making some progress around the sleep-related issues, we've made a lot of progress. And one of the doctors who was part of the committee who worked with us to kind of resolve this, working with 7 great community institutions spread across the county of Sacramento, we were able to start a safe baby assessment program at Kaiser Hospital, one of the big providers.
Mm-hmm.
That particular project now is in effect at all of the major healthcare providers across the region. And it's not only for Black women or Black families. Every child born in our region gets a safe baby assessment done for that particular parent. And if that parent doesn't have a safe place for their baby to sleep, they are given one. So as the great John Powell says, targeted universalism. You can focus a target on a population that's suffering, and you can do it in a way that's not discriminatory, because if it results in the formation of good public policy, that good public policy will most often benefit all of us.
The entire community.
In direct and in indirect ways, from seeing fewer children die, which is something I think we can all applaud ourselves for, this whole community for investing and supporting this work, to the financial costs of dealing with children who end up in hospitals in highly troubled states, which is a very expensive proposition that could be avoided with a very simple intervention. That's great public policy.
Chet, are you seeing this program roll out into other states and other communities as a result of the success you've had here?
This program is nationally recognized.
Awesome.
Born and developed in Sacramento. It has rolled out to Fresno County, where some of the data is even more challenging, and inquiries from Los Angeles County, who's interested as well.
That's fantastic. And I think it shows and demonstrates the significance of an organization like Sierra Health, who's sitting there saying, oh, no, this isn't just going to happen and we hope it works. It's tracked, and every key performance indicator that you're looking for is monitored, and you can adequately say at the end, yeah, here's what it's done. 20% is incredible. That's a huge number.
We have a great, network of folks who are doing it. It's BCLC, it's Birth and Beyond, and other folks all pulling to the same goal, working with different groups, but as I said, same outcome. And I think that kind of public-private partnership, which is what the center specializes in, and that's what makes it different from the foundation. The foundation is a grant maker, right? Center is entity that we describe as an intermediary that accelerates both the implementation and the efficacy of programs that it helps to manage in support of partners who have a common set of goals that they're working to achieve.
So let me ask a question, because you naturally moved right into the next question, which is the center. But before we get there, is it conceivable that the foundation could pass monies through into the center and then out into the community?
We often invest in the projects that the center is engaged in.
Got it.
Because one of the things that we believe in is that we say to folks that if this is that important, we should have some skin in the game too, right? We're not just out there looking for resources from other institutions. We're going to be an investor. Part of what the foundation does and why it has a 40-year history, because it has a corpus that's invested, right? And we always say that we would never invest in any fund that the leader of that fund was unwilling to invest his own money in. And if you know investment, that's kind of how you manage your money.
Right.
And so we're not looking at anybody to invest in any project without us being willing to put some of our own capital at risk because we think it's that important.
So now, the center. Congratulations, 11 years later.
Yes.
Here we are talking about an institution in the community and in the state, a separate 501c3. Tell us what its purpose and its engagement is under the umbrella of Sierra Health.
It functions as a space for public institutions. We do a lot of work with state governmental agencies, sometimes working in partnership with not only just Sierra Health Foundation, but other foundations to address any number of issues that are pertinent throughout the state of California. It aggregates those resources, and it creates a really great process for distributing those resources in ways that are more equitable, more transparent, and more available to institutions or communities that heretofore would probably experience deeper challenges getting access to those resources as well. And I have to tip my hat to the state who has seen this partnership being a valuable one. Not a passing along of their responsibility, but I would say, as someone who spent a fair amount of my own career in the public sector, a partnership that they know enhances the work that they want to achieve, right? Done in partnership. We're always better together. And I could talk about a few of the projects that we have actually done that I think have had an enormous impact, from some of the initial communications work done during the pandemic. Many of you see that those commercials were brought to you by Sierra Health Foundation. That was really brought to you by Sierra Health, the state, and a number of entities, RSA and other folks who have worked on that campaign.
One of our founding partners.
Right. One of the ethnic media that we worked with, a phenomenal campaign. We actually had an art show that was curated by some of the products that came out of that campaign. from the pictures of folks wearing masks that you saw on billboards to, artwork on murals that were created in communities, particularly when at the beginning of the pandemic, we didn't have a therapeutic, there was no vaccine, and everything was behavioral. And so how do you convey and reinforce those behavioral messages? Really, really proud of that particular work. Something that we've been doing for the past number of years that's ongoing and still remains a challenge. That is a response to the fentanyl and opioid epidemic that's, ravaging communities across this country as well. We have a major partnership with the state that's actually ensuring that tribal communities, ethnic communities, the white community, that all communities that are confronting this are having opportunities to access resources, to build community supports and services that are really pushing back against, that epidemic and the loss of life, the extraordinary loss of life it's actually causing.
Well, the interesting thing, too, again, with your metrics, you're going to be able to track and demonstrate impact in that category because it's extremely measurable. If
right.
people died, now there's less people dying. We know we've made an impact because of the programs that we've instituted. You were saying something in our pre-conversation that I want to address as well that the center supports other organizations with, and that's some of the administrative, the back end, and getting it right so that they don't have the challenges of funding, et cetera, from pass-through to the state. Share a little bit of that with us, will you?
One of the things we learned at the center over our 40 years, at the foundation of our 40 years and over the past 11 years at the center, is that there are a lot of groups who do fantastic work. They tend to be smaller, more community-focused. That's part of what allows them to connect with people who are sometimes not wanting to be contacted because they're grappling with any number of issues, but who also lack the kind of infrastructure that it typically takes to gain access to resources to support that particular work. And we're big believers in accountability. We want those groups to be successful. We want folks to feel like the public dollars are being spent well. And so we have worked hard over the past 11 years to build out an infrastructure that assists communities to do that. And if you just say, simplify that for me, Chet, we built out an architecture that allows them to do the things that they're really, really good at, and for us to support the things that they're less good at. Right? And therein lies the basis of our partnership. We say at the center and at the foundation that we don't have grantees. We only have partners, whether they're public partners, large public bureaucracies, or small community groups. A grant is a transaction between the partners. It is not the nature of our relationship. The nature of our relationship is that we're working together for a common good, a public good, something that we both want to see achieved. And that allows us to hold the skill sets that we each have uniquely as a high-value contribution toward that outcome.
And you're deeply involved. This is not just, here's your money, tell us how it goes. You're integrated in that partnership. You have a responsibility as much as the entity you're serving.
No, you're right, because when we have a contract with the state to do this work, and we work with our subrecipients, technical term, but folks that we are working to support who
our
do the work. Our
nonprofit leadership's going to know exactly what you're talking about there.
We have a financial responsibility to the state, and we bear some of that risk. That if things go wrong in certain ways, we could be accountable for disallowances of certain types. But that architecture that I talked about is more than just structure. There are tools that allow the accounting to be done well, the invoicing to be done well, so that it passes audits, not just internal to the center, but whoever was to come and audit it. So that those groups are protected, that the center is protected, and that the state can be assured that the investments it's made in the center for those purposes of connecting with communities are being managed in the best way possible. And we do a lot of technical assistance and capacity building for those groups. We deploy our own highly skilled financial experts, sometimes to be consultants to those groups at no cost because we want them to succeed. We do training about how to do the work that comes from some of the best experts and, academics, researchers that we can find, so they are building their knowledge base about the work that they want to do as well. And it is that combination of, a great infrastructure supplemented by the foundation, as well as, the resources they get that allows them to do, extraordinary work over a longer period of time with a level of support that gives them the best chance of being successful.
This informative conversation with Chet Hewitt of Sierra Health Foundation continues right after we hear from those who make the program possible.
Make our communities bright with Smudge Shine Awards. Now through July 31st, your nonprofit can apply for a chance to receive funding for projects that improve and revitalize communities in our service area. We're seeking proposals that support zero carbon workforce development, environmental justice and equity, inclusive economic growth, and STEM education. Smudge Shine Awards are competitive and funds are limited. Submit your proposal by July 31st. Learn more at smud.org/shine.
I'm thrilled to have Western Health Advantage partnering with us as they do so much to support so many nonprofit agencies in our community. As a truly local health plan, you'll find individual and family options, employer options, plans for CalPERS and Medicare Advantage. From medical services to pharmacy, health and wellness support, as well as behavioral health care, Western Health Advantage has a plan that fits what you need. As an employer, for profit or nonprofit business, individual or family, you can find more at westernhealth.com.
Hello, this is Scott Thomas with Cap Trust in our Sacramento office. I specialize in working with local nonprofits and associations. Annually, we survey private and public nonprofit organizations across the country to better understand challenges they see in today's environment. In our more recent survey, we heard concerns about proper board governance, mission-aligned investment, and how to implement alternative investments. If you would like a copy of the survey or to discuss your organization, look me up, Scott Thomas at captrust.com.
That's a partnership.
Mm-hmm.
That is truly a partnership where you have skin in the game, in their game.
Yes, we do.
And if they are in the game as they should be, everybody wins. It's just such a different way than some other ways that they may get their money. And I applaud you for that. And I'm sure you saw that need with the center to say, no, we need to get deeper into these organizations in the community. And the difference on the center is statewide.
Yes, the center actually operates across the entire state of California.
Okay.
Yeah.
Talk to us a little bit about the funding, because you've got two entities. Sierra Health, it's a private philanthropy that is funding the operation. What does that look like? A lot of people are going, where's that money coming from? I don't understand.
Well, that comes from a corporate remains of the CEO of Foundation Health Plan to that for-profit concern, created a corpus of about $68 million, which was invested over time. And of course, we're required by law to give about 5% of our assets away. And you would think that over a 40-year period of time, you have the opportunity to either grow those assets or they deplete over time. We're still almost as large as we were the day that we were founded, although we've given away close to $115 million over those 40 years. And on the center side, which is a derivative of the foundation, and it's not only investments, but the knowledge gained through its operation, will do about $241 million in grant making to communities across the state of California this year alone.
Wow, that's an amazingly huge number in terms of value and benefit to the individual communities that are recipients of the investment you've made in those nonprofit organizations in each of these communities.
And the only thing I would say is the investment that we have made, because we have done this with resources that are largely derived from our partnerships with a number of large public agencies in the state of California and some of the local ones here in our region. But ultimately, when I say we, it's all of us, everyone listening to this call, because it is money from taxpayers being put to extraordinary use in places and with people who need that support. We're just really honored that we play a role in trying to help that be done in the most efficacious and accountable way as possible.
Thank you for that clarification, too, because this isn't just Sierra Health or just the center. This is state engagement as well.
That's right.
I look through the website and I hear how you're speaking. A lot of times we have collaborative in the discussion. You don't exist without collaborative. You're engaged with our healthcare institutions. You're engaged with the organizations on the street and the communities that are distributing that equity into the community, that service to the community. Is there anybody that is maybe more significant than others? Because you are connected to every nonprofit that you service.
Mm-hmm.
So to say, well, who do you collaborate with? You collaborate with everybody. But you did mention a few in the discussion that are significant. For example, maybe the state or some of the healthcare institutions. Talk to us a little bit about what some of those big collaborators with Sierra Health and or the center look like.
And big is a relative term because I think some of our biggest collaborators are folks who walk the streets in some of the communities that are highest suffering and do it with both a level of pride and impact that is extraordinary. And they couldn't do that without the big commitments from public institutions. Our approach to this, our vision and values that we bring to it is that everybody's big. And that big is not just about money or about the number of employees you have or sets of relationships that you have. Big is about the role and the impact that you can help us achieve. And I would argue that none of us would be as impactful in this work or in these lines of work, because there are several, I think is more appropriate way to describe it, without each of us being at the table. We each have a core role to play, and it is an essential role to play. I'm not trying to be pithy and just trying to spread, acclaim to all parties so that no one's offended. I say this out of experience, because when we're all not there, I've seen things not go well as well. So, we've gotten to this particular point, not because we started out with some grand idea. There were trips and falls and stumbles and scarred knees and elbows that came along with trying to achieve big ideas and being unsuccessful. And what led to the development of the center to work in partnership with the foundation was our ability to leverage our investments with those of aligned partners to do incredible work. And I'd like to believe that any partner you would invite, whether it was Rose Family Development from South Sacramento or someone from the Department of Children and Family Services from the County of Sacramento, that they would all say that the partnerships that we've been able to develop have been beneficial to each of us.
I think that was a wonderful way to say that everybody is involved in collaboration with the organization. Everybody, from the highest executive to the person on the street that's administering a program to an individual.
Yes, it is an evolving way of thinking. It's not just unique to our institution, but I think it carries and requires a level of humbleness about who you are in the ecosystems that we're a part of, and a better sense of trying to equalize some of the power imbalances that typically walk into those rooms and those spaces when we're all there. Are we perfect at it? I don't think so. But I do think that we've gotten really, really good. And I think the data suggests, because of the positive impact that we have, that it tends to be working.
I hear some of the things that you're doing, and I can't help but start thinking of some of the organizations I have to share this with because I know they don't know. And there's an opportunity for them there. And that's one of the benefits of these conversations, because we just reach out and say, hey, did you know? No, I didn't. Okay, well, you need to reach out because there's something here. So you will be hearing from some people as just a result of this couple of questions. One of the things I want to ask you, because you have some visibility at a high level, you have some visibility at a very community-driven level. Over the course of the last, let's narrow it down to maybe just the last 10 years, not from when you started, what have you seen that's changed significantly? What are some of the most significant developments, good and or not so good?
Yeah, I could almost put it into like 3 periods. And one is recent and new, and we're starting to grapple with it.
Right.
And we could talk a lot about it in some ways, and I'm sure we'll get to it at least a little bit. But as I said, it's still unfolding. I started at the end of 2007, the beginning of 2008. That was a Great Recession. And many institutions, including many charitable foundations, lost a lot of money. And,
if they survived.
Yeah, and some went out of business. And, one of the things that we at Sierra Health Foundation did during that time was to meet all of our commitments, despite having really powerful impact or erosion of our corpus going forward. And I remember one of my first conversations with the board, we have a few members who are still with us from that time, that our sense was, while one could make a good argument of kind of forming back some of the commitments that we had made, that we were still in a better position than most nonprofits, because foundations are nonprofits. And so we should do as much as we can to help folks. Now, we did change our grant making a little bit. You may recall we started one of the first funds for the region to help, support food banks, to help people pay utility bills, given all the layoffs and job losses and things that people were experiencing. And so we did more traditional healthcare focused work and more kind of social determinants of health work during that period. And that was about 4 years. We ran through that. And while we're required by law to give away 5% of our assets, there were years when we was as high as 12%.
I would say you probably ate into some of the corpus, right?
Yeah. And, we had a mantra that we used during that time to provide some comfort because, that's not what some would argue is the best way to run a foundation. But we started saying that we would be less concerned by how long we were here and more concerned about what we've done.
Mm-hmm.
And for us, again, it sounds like pithy, but these value statements, when they resonate with people, really cause them to act upon those big ideas.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what we did. I'm not suggesting that we weren't prudent, that we weren't thoughtful, but we knew that our community and region was suffering, and we wanted to be helpful in whatever ways we could to resolve some of those particular challenges. And I think that we played a role amongst many others in getting through that time. And then, 2012, things got better, and, we launched a center, shrunk a lot in terms of our corpus, and the center was a way to try to think about how to leverage our impact through partnerships. And that has gone very, very well. I think over time, the center has contracted over $1.5 billion worth of investment, working, again, in partnership with public sector and private donors, 95% of which has been reinvested back.
And this is just in your 11 years.
Yes, that's not our 11 years.
Significant amount of money.
Yes. And, people say, well, you should be screaming that from the rooftops. And I guess we do have a story that one could scream.
Yeah.
But we have been really focused on the work and with the belief that it speaks for itself by the reputation we hold in communities that we've had great privilege of working with as well across the state of California. I think the second period was the pandemic, which kind of uprooted so many things for so many people, deep economic effects again, and of course the health effects and the loss of life that we've seen happening across the state of California. And for us, again, activated, met commitments, spent at a higher rate, and took on new forms of programmatic work where we had to get really smart really quickly, particularly around our media campaigns. And I think that in partnership with RSC and with the state and bringing folks together who are really thoughtful about those type of campaigns, along with ethnic media, did a fantastic job that touched on, my numbers, I'm doing it from memory here, about 14 million Californians.
I won't hold you to those numbers.
So,
good enough is good enough.
And they're very good numbers. If I'm doing anything, I'm probably underestimating a little bit here about, how to get through that particular period in the healthiest way possible. We did a lot of food bank and, vaccine hesitancy work to give people the kind of information they need so they can make the choices they felt were best for them as well. But really trying to work so that people had all the information they needed to make the choice that they felt was best for them. We believe that, following through on vaccines, things, made a lot of sense. We knew a lot of people, didn't, but that should not be derivative of misinformation.
Right.
You should understand exactly what risks you're taking on for yourself, your family, or whoever else might be impacted as you go forward as well. So we think that was good public health work for a foundation that's focused in that public health space. We also increasingly began to focus on a community and economic opportunity as a health intervention, because the better job you have, the better your wages are. And as increasingly we say, your zip code, we can tell how long you live. And as you know, your zip code is purchased. But that's a derivative of your social economic status. And so how do you improve that for people as well? And we launched our Community Economic Mobilization Initiative, which we think is forward-leaning for a health foundation. We worked in partnership with the James Irvine Foundation. Big shout out to Don Howard and his particular team. And we're investing about $25 million in helping groups that traditionally provide services in community to think about the economic development of those communities, how to restore businesses and a kind of economic vitality in those places where poor health and poor economic outcomes are concentrated.
And this is all coming just in the realm of that COVID era.
That's right. That's coming out
Boy,
of
that's a lot of work.
that particular era. Doing what all great institutions do, and that is not only trying to respond to the moment,
Mm-hmm.
but to learn from the moment and use those lessons to plan forward.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's kind of, I think, the sweet spot for the foundation, and why we, over the 40 years, have had continued success. And since the creation of the center, I continue to kind of walk that forward. New institutions, new structures, rather than thinking about the foundation, thinking about the enterprise associated with the production of good health, particularly in communities that are falling behind, as an emphasis for us as well. And then the third phase of this for us clearly will be the period we're entering in now, a new administration in Washington, flowing back of funds everywhere, everywhere, everything, all at once kind of scenario, kind of a play off of the movie theme, and kind of stress that it is invoking within the nonprofit sector, and increasingly, because we're on the front end of this, the kind of impact it's actually having in populations and geographies, communities as well.
It's still fresh to us because we really don't know where this is. We're not even a year into this. There's 3 more to come. As you see it today in this third phase, what are some of the most significant things you're seeing now, right? Just today. And this is being recorded in May of 2025 for the benefit of somebody who's listening in the future. We know where we are here at this point in time.
I see it as being more mean-spirited than thoughtful. I mean, there are a lot of challenges in this country we have to deal with, that other things which, most of us can get our minds around. But my mother used to always say, it's not always what you say, it's how you say it. It's not always what you do, it's how you do it. And while those things need to be dealt with, I think we need to be really clear about what we're putting at risk. And I, as someone who's worked in public policy for a long time, don't believe that you should put the health of seniors or the future of young people at risk, even as we're dealing with more contemporary issues as well. And so when I see things that are altering the possibility of young people getting great educations, going on to college, or, trade schools to learn skills that move you towards, better wages and opportunities, the kind of randomness of it, the clawing back of resources. I'll give you an example, and this is one that happened to us for a project that we had. We were notified on March 28th that the program, which was Coronavirus Rapid Response Fund, was going to end on March 24th, and that no activity, billable activity from March 24th on would be paid for. And we were notified on March 28th.
You forgot 4 days that you've been operating.
A week, because that was the afternoon, a week. Remember, the following day, Monday, was a state holiday, so we couldn't even inform our partners. 200 groups impacted by that decision.
Upside down. Because there's already investment made and spent.
They had been working for that particular week.
Sure.
That puts the already fragile nonprofit sector, particularly some about smaller groups, in harm's way.
Sure.
And so when I talk about the way you do things, I'm not saying that I agree with those dollars being clawed back. That's not the point. I said I've worked in the public sector. Usually there is a responsible way to ramp things down. I would say this just as a global statement. If you're thinking about policy and change, regardless on what side of whatever aisle you think you happen to be on, what should be first and foremost in one mind is what impact that will have on people. And I think we got to be clear that even as we deal with, long-term structural issues in this country, the idea is not to do harm to people. And I know that's a high watermark. You say, there's easy way and simple things to do. You lay people off from Department of Education or whatever. But that has an impact on the lives, livelihoods, and life chances of tens of millions of individuals. And we should be really, really thoughtful about how we go about achieving some of those aims.
And knowing when we're speaking and having this conversation, we've yet to see what this ultimate impact is going to look like or where it goes.
I think we're really concerned about what we're seeing. I think the approach has been very clear. It's very concerning.
Oh, and I meant that with great concern. Yeah. I didn't mean that with
and
casual.
I didn't take it any other way.
Yes.
I'm just trying to be really clear.
Yes.
I don't want people to say, well, is Chet saying that he's okay with it? No, I mean, I'm not. What I am saying is that some of the things that people are saying that they're concerned about are legitimate issues.
Yes.
if we're going to say we're going to be fact-based and we're going to be thoughtful, then we have to deal with all facts and we got to be thoughtful about, all things.
Yep.
But I am also being very clear that how you go about addressing those issues says a lot about who we are as a nation.
Mm-hmm.
And we should still care about the poor. We should still care about seniors. We should still care about anyone in between. And we daggone well should be caring about our children.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. Looking at things from a different perspective, and this is unique for you because not many organizations have the benefit of both sides of it, a philanthropic endowment as well as a grant-driven and funded organization. Money, no object. What does the organization look like if you weren't dealing with anything that's causing you boundaries and guidelines? If you, Chet, here's all the money you need to do whatever you need to do in the state of California, what would be different?
Well, I think we'd be working in more areas, bringing the same skill sets to bear. I'd like for us to do more around economic opportunity. I spent most of my career in the social service space, believe in social service programs from supplementing families around the nutrition, SNAP, to some of the income support programs, and clearly, health care, subsidized health care access for people as well. But I also believe that the pathway out of poverty on a more permanent basis is opportunity. I think we got to get back to what does it mean to more equitably distribute opportunity in this country. And regardless of how you want to look at it, one of the most powerful tools is education. That's why parents, millennium, have been telling you, go out, get educated, and that gives you the best chance for a better life. And we should be doing nothing to impede that, but a part of any child. Schools should be oasis in the more poor communities for people who are willing to struggle to gain the skills and knowledge so they can advance themselves as well. So more work in that particular space, more work in the economic opportunity space, because that is a pathway to better health and well-being, and less reliance on those punitive systems, juvenile justice and others, that really get kids off track from being contributing adults in healthy and productive ways.
So the organization would almost envelop all of those, whereas today you're somewhat limited because you only have so much you can do. You end up either embracing or developing, creating some sense of, an economic program that's built within, an educational program that's built within and under the guise of and or the umbrella of Sierra Health statewide.
Yeah, and our belief is that we think that there's a space for the model that we created. We don't believe that we have to be the only one out there doing it all by ourselves. But I do believe that having more philanthropic intermediaries around the state or around this country to help those communities who we often complain about the lack of capacity in their nonprofit sector to build that capacity would be really important. And it goes back to something I said at the beginning of this conversation. Our ability to achieve the outcomes we want in any number of domains really rests on communities having essential roles to play in whatever those interventions are. What we've learned in this country is that you can't do things to people or for people without those people themselves.
And an interest in doing.
That's right.
They have to participate.
They have got to participate.
Force it on them. Correct.
Otherwise, whatever gains you have are often temporary, if you have gains at all, and aren't internalized in a way that allows communities to embrace and hold on to the achievements they make and to sustain them, over time. I talked about a humbleness that I see permeating the world of philanthropy. I think we're not only learning that lesson, I think we have for a long time. I think we're embracing it in a very different way, and that holds promise for great returns on philanthropic and public investments in the days ahead.
We are absolutely seeing an acceptance of leadership as humility and understanding, authenticity and transparency, whereas before it was a different bravado that needed to be exhibited or displayed or worked. And we're also seeing, I think it's because of a lot of organizations like yours, an understanding of business acumen input to the organizations, where it's not how skinny can I make it on service at the expense of administration, how big can I make it with the investment of opportunities that come my way. And
No, it's a really important point, and I hope people got that from this conversation, although I don't think I spoke it directly. But I'm a businessman,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm in the business of helping aligned entities, improve the life and well-being of individuals. But how we think about things has a very business mindset associated
Mm-hmm.
with it. We're co-investors in our programs. We build funds. You've seen our website. We have
Mm-hmm.
different portfolios. We are managing those portfolios in the same way people of wealth have other folks managing their retirement accounts,
Mm-hmm.
right? Who get fees for doing that.
Mm-hmm.
They don't do it for free. And the return on those investments is the level of performance that you see from them. And we're willing to be held accountable on our performance.
Well, because
Right.
your performance translates directly back in, even if it's just that 5%.
Right.
That 5% grows at whatever the investment grows back
That's right.
to funding that you can put into the community.
That's right. And I would hope that if we were failing on performance, that would be a conversation we'd have to have with our investors about what we're going to do about that.
Mm-hmm.
But no, you don't get it. You don't get those kind of outcomes on the skinny. You don't get it by starving nonprofits and undervaluing what their contribution is. And while, yes, I'd agree that we want to maximize the level of resources that go into providing the service,
Mm-hmm.
giving them a great back office operation so they can tell you what they're achieving is really important. And you can do that in a number of ways. I don't know you need to build that capacity in every nonprofit, but we hold some of that capacity. We have an evaluations unit. We have a financial team that's top-notch, along with our financial unit. We have a communications team, and we deploy those folks to be of assistance to folks. And when they encounter obstacles, I'll give you one example. One of the things that we've seen a number of nonprofits dealt with was that, during the pandemic, there was lots of federal money. Most nonprofits had a level of insurance to be able to draw down an invoice for the work that they were actually doing. When we found out that many of our nonprofits who were doing work were being withheld payments because they didn't have or they did not meet the insurance thresholds, the foundation invested in $1 million account with Cal Nonprofits, a great organization, also associated with, I've served on the board, to do an insurance program for folks so that we could help them buy the insurance.
Mm-hmm.
This is what I mean about investing in the things that we believe in,
Mm-hmm.
bringing all of our assets, both time and treasure, relationship and knowledge to bear on the resolution of a problem.
Mm-hmm.
And being less concerned about who gets credit for it and celebrate more the fact that we've been able to improve whatever that condition was.
Taking that thought, again, bridges right into the next question. Mm-hmm. What is the greatest need? What do you see today as the greatest need for the operation you're responsible for?
I think there is levels of efficiency that we could achieve, and we're still investing in kind of building out that technology backbone that allows us to do our work even better and more efficiently. There's some incredible tools coming out of the tech sector that we believe will be helpful to folks. Moving beyond, we do everything ACH payments, and people can submit invoices now, which, folks can go through electronically, and not a lot of mail and back and forth and things. So it's a much simpler process, much more elegant process. We think that there is more to be done in that regard. And this may seem like a strange one given the times that we're in, but I'd like to see more public investments in the developmental activities that we know allow people to move in more permanent ways to a better place.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So supporting groups like IYT and others who are helping young people around their education. And there are
Improve Your Tomorrow, Michael Lynch's group.
Michael Lynch, and I apologize for using acronyms, but that's how I kind of know them. And there are others in that space as well.
Mm-hmm. Back to education for the benefit of health equity.
Would be education for the benefit of health equity and well-being.
Yes.
For people as well, because that's an important contributor to well-being. I think there's still more work for us to do around getting people access to healthy foods.
Mm-hmm.
I know a few years ago we talked a lot about food deserts. There are still food deserts, and we need to do something about that. And if you to say what's number one on our list, and my sabbatical last year, I did some touring around this particular issue, is homelessness.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's hard to eat well. It's hard to do your homework if you have a young person living in a car.
Yes.
Trying to do your homework in the back seat. Those are not the conditions that bode well for our economic, social future, the vitality of our region, the state of California, our nation. if you have growing numbers of families and young people having those experiences. And my sabbatical last summer, I was off for 3 months after 17 years. I actually toured this country and seen some folks who were doing some pretty incredible things around homelessness. From 3D printed homes, which was a phenomenal thing to see. It's actually real. The communities who are building smaller homes and doing it in ways where it's not just a lot of small living environments crowded into, some limited amount of space, but really building communities of small homes where people are experiencing the kind of dignity one should have, we all should have, in the places that we call home and in the communities that we call home.
Wrapping up, what's the best way to learn, to find out more about both Sierra Health and the center?
I would say, go to our website, the center and the foundation. That'll give you a good start. Sometimes people get a little confused with saying the center foundation, but hopefully this conversation has clarified some things for people in a way that we think about the enterprise, not just a single institution, and how they work together. Of course, we often have gatherings at the foundation in our conference center, which we have made available for nonprofit use for the entirety of the time that we've had that beautiful building on Garden Highway at no cost to those groups. But to come to one of our convenings and to engage us, we are relational in our nature and in our approach to our programming. And so we find great enjoyment in having conversations like this one here today, when we get to explain ourselves. I would say this to people. It is not as complicated as it sounds. And there are 3 things you should know about us. 1, that partnership is our preferred method of operation. That a level of humbleness about who we are, we're not going to be running around. We've done some tremendous things. But we're not going to be running around our town saying, we're great, look at us. That's not our approach. And if we do celebrate, because we are not Luddites in that regard, they are about the partnership work that we're engaged in. It's about all of us and what the collective is capable of doing around any issue as well. And the last thing I'll say is we are hopeful about the future despite the times that we're in currently.
Which is what we all need to remain. Hope is everything.
That's right.
We see hope, we continue to progress. We see people who become hopeless. We either need to do what we need to do, change that perspective, or move them so they don't get in the way of stopping the progress. And eventually they'll come back.
That's right.
Because they'll recognize that the opportunity does exist. You mentioned the building, and I have to say, I was at the grand opening of that building. I was at the radio stations at the time, operating a group of radio stations, and I remember going to the building, and I was amazed by what this facility looked like on Garden High. It was beautiful. The amazement today is it still looks the same. I mean, in terms of its maintenance and its facility, it's every bit the same as it was then, and the way that it was designed has stood the test of time. It's still as contemporary as anything today. And it's such a neat facility for all the things that you do there. And you do have that as a fee-for-service lease, correct, at some point?
That's right. We allow nonprofits to use. We have never charged anybody in 28 years the building has been in operation. We have about 15,000 people come through our conference.
Okay, so it's
center.
not a fee. It's just an application.
That's an application.
You just got to get the time.
And if it's available and you're a nonprofit, you can use the space.
Well, thank you for clarifying that.
It is, in some ways, it is a very tangible manifestation of all the things that we've talked about in this conversation. We have decided that we would say less, do more. And as we say, we want to be about the things that we say that we believe in. And so if you really want to know more about us, come visit us. We'd love to have a conversation about who we are. We do. I've done a lot of technical assistance. We have a number of groups around the country who are trying to replicate what we are. And we take that as a high honor in terms of folks believing that we may, in fact, be on to something that's worthy of being replicated, like many of our programs have been in other places around California or the country.
Chet, I'm amazed by the growth of the organization. 40 years of solidarity in spite of economic recessions and pandemics, and still here standing today in a wonderful position. And what you present to so many of our local nonprofits, the opportunities you present, not only in the facility, but what you do in the field, what you do in the state, what you do through the center and or Sierra Health as a funder. It's it's just amazing to know that that sort of operation exists right here in Sacramento, in our state capital, and that you're able to reach all the people that you do through the organization over such a period of time, and what you represent for those in the underserved communities who know that they've got an associate who becomes a partner in their operation. So for what you do, what you've done, what you've built, you're almost 20 years there. You're only the second guy to run the thing.
Mm-hmm.
Congratulations to you and
Thank
the
you
team.
so much.
And thank you for what you do for the organization, what you do for the community, what you're doing for the state, and for those who are replicating what you're doing.
Thank you so much. And, I'd be remiss if I didn't say I've had a great team, a pretty stable team, a senior exec who helped us start. Some have transitioned on and a couple have retired, but a new team of folks and an extraordinary board who really said what I think I represent the best of philanthropy. And there's a lot of good philanthropies around it, so I don't say that to exclusion of anyone at all. But they were thoughtful risk takers who believe that one of the essential things that Zero Health Foundation can bring to its work locally, statewide, and nationally was to be an innovator around how you really work with communities to improve their life and well-being. And I really do appreciate the people I've worked with, the board I've had the pleasure of serving for, and most importantly, the communities that we've been able to partner with.
Mm-hmm. And I think we should say thanks to Foundation Health for having the vision to set this thing up. Dan Crowley and his group of people back in the day, they were innovative in the way they rolled out the health plan with the facilities all around the city. And the next thing you know, it's unfortunately sold. But look at the benefit we've gained as a result of that.
Yes.
So thank you again. I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Nonprofit Podcast Network. I hope you enjoyed the episode. If what you heard moved you, please reach out to that organization and do what you can to help. If you like and appreciate what we're doing to support local nonprofits, please give us a positive review, subscribe, and share. If you're a nonprofit with an interest in participating in an episode, you can reach me at jeff@hearmenowstudio.com. Once again, we're grateful for the businesses who have made this program possible. CapTrust, fiduciary advice for endowments and foundations. You can find them in Sacramento, Roseville, and Folsom. CapTrust.com. SMUD Shine Awards, helping support our nonprofit community with grants for more efficient energy usage. smud.org/shine. And Western Health Advantage, a full-service healthcare plan for individuals, employer groups, and families. westernhealth.com.